Good evening to everybody. We just giving in another 2 minutes. We've got people waiting in the waiting room to come in. We're just giving another 2 minutes and we're going to go live. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Miranda van Dam. I'm a patient that has axial spondyloarthritis, and I'm also the chairperson of our patient support group. Thank you for attending the information session about the rollout of IMAS in South Africa. Driving medical aids and PMBs is crucial for us, as it's becoming more and more difficult to approve biologics and medication, and with a disease that is progressive and can cause irreversible damage unless treated. This live witness survey will deliver a great punch. ASIF is an international membership organization representing patient associations around the globe, specializing in the support of patients with AXPAR. About 3 years ago, we became a member of this international federation, and it has opened many doors for us in South Africa. Could we please ask that you mute your microphones up to the question and answer sessions? You are also welcome to post any questions in the chat section. We would also like to welcome Dr. Kavita Makan, who's the president of SARA, Dr. Gareth Tarr, who has been our project consultant, Marie Eklund from Novartis, who has been instrumental in rolling out this project in South Africa, and every rheumatologist that is here with us this evening. Then our VIP guests, that's certainly every single patient that's got AXPAR. Your disease will no longer be looked over. The disease may be silent, but we are not. Before I introduce Dr. Kavita Makan, allow me to share a patient video that will demonstrate the importance of creating awareness of AXPAR in our country and the importance of live evidence of this silent disease. Busy racing, I'd have to phone my dad and ask him to come and collect me halfway through my race. And this kind of continued every Saturday. And that's when I started realizing something is not okay. When I couldn't really do day-to-day things that I was participating in. Another thing was blow drying my hair. I couldn't lift my arms up, and that's when I knew something wasn't okay. Throughout my 8 years of struggling with this disease, which I didn't know I had, it was really difficult to put in words to people, that I'm not really mentally ill, that I'm really sick, and I have a disease. When I finally received my diagnosis in South Africa, it was still called ankylosing spondylitis. I was so happy. I remember phoning everybody and saying, "You won't believe it. I've got ankylosing spondylitis." Finally, I could almost say to people, I'm not mad and I'm okay, and that I've got a disease and I've got a name and it's got weight. So 8 years of me complaining came to me getting this diagnosis. And there was a huge relief in that. And there was a huge relief, I think, for my friends and family as well, to know that now at least we know that we're dealing with and we can get on with it. think I feel horrified now looking back at 8 years, thinking that if I was diagnosed within that first year of knowing what was going on, the outcome for me could have been a lot different, because if you're diagnosed early with axSpA and they start treating you quite vigorously, the chances of you going into remission is can be better. Your outcome could be better. I'm not sure if you could call it remission. So I do look back thinking, geez, if we wouldn't waste 8 years. And, it's 8 years of lying flat on my back, 8 years of not riding my bike, 8 years of emotionally being a mess, 8 years of checking out of my life socially. I don't know how many times you're invited somewhere and at the last minute you say you're not going to be there. It's easier for me to be at home and be in my bed than be out. So each and every single time I've missed out on something in 8 years, that is a shame. 8 years is a long time to not know what's going on. And I think it's frightening, not only for yourself, but people around you to witness that they can see something is going on. I had 2 small kids in the house. I think for them to see me lying on my back, being unable to even take my shoes off. If you call your 6-year-old to the bed and ask him to take his shoes off because mommy can't, that's quite frightening for them as well. I think it took a long time after after my actual diagnosis to get rid of the emotional burden that I was carrying for 8 years. So to get my head around that. Being part of this delayed diagnosis campaign gives me goosebumps, because I am a walking delayed diagnosis example, and it touched me. It's almost like my wind was kicked out when it happened to me, and only really afterwards did I realize the effect it had. And being part of this effort globally, creating awareness and really being vulnerable, talking about my story, I'm proud to be able to do that. If this information could make any difference to anybody's lives, this would be really a happy ending to my story.
Right, Dr. Kavita Makan needs no introduction. She has been such a support for our patients support group from day one. Please allow Dr. Makan to say a few welcome words to everybody.
Thank you, Miranda, and a very warm evening. Welcome to all the attendees, my fellow rheumatologists, and our highly motivated and informed patients. On behalf of SARA and all the South African rheumatologists, we would like to acknowledge you, Miranda, and the Axial Spondyloarthritis Society of South Africa for your tremendous work in promoting and advocating for people with axial spondyloarthritis. And in such a short space of time, and in fact, during a very challenging time in South Africa's history. And SARA, as the professional body for Rheumatology South Africa, is very proud to be affiliated with and support the society in a long and hopefully productive partnership. For those who don't know Miranda, Miranda is the chairperson of this association. And as she's shown in this video, she actually has axial spondyloarthritis. I wouldn't say suffer, because she's really living her best life with this disease. And with her professional business background, has really been a tornado in the space, driving this association and forcing people to listen, both internationally and nationally, to the many unheard voices of people suffering from this potentially disabling disease. We expect a lot of noise and activity coming from this area of rheumatology, and this initiative presented today is just one of the many endeavors going forward. With IMAS, or the International Map of Axial Spondyloarthritis, which is a project fueled by the Axial Spondyloarthritis International Federation, we hope to connect as many axial SPA sufferers from across the globe through a very dynamic communication platform and survey, addressing questions pertinent to the well-being of the patient and really assisting healthcare professionals in targeting the direct unmet needs of patients with AXFA through what cannot be better described as a patient-driven research. And Gareth and Miranda will discuss this in a bit more detail. But from my perspective, I would like to emphasize the importance of patient-related outcome measures that have facilitated decision-making processes in numerous other areas of rheumatology, from rheumatoid arthritis to systemic lupus. And this is just another way of looking at this tool. With the advent of newer technologies and social media and communication mediums, we can reach many more people than simply our waiting rooms or clinics, and truly expand our understanding of how best to impact or optimize patients' care outcomes and quality of life. And so with that, I'd like to hand back to Miranda to kickstart the main part of tonight's agenda. Miranda?
Dr. Makan, thank you so much for your kind words and encouragement and recognizing every patient in this room, which is so important. I'd like to introduce Dr. Gareth Tarr. He was one of the first doctors I spoke to when I got this Mad Hat idea of starting a patient support group, and he was very adamant that patient support group in our country is crucial, and he was one of the reasons I pushed forward. I think Dr. Tarr's been amazing. He spent hours checking and double checking the IMAS questionnaires with us, and he's going to be chatting to us about the importance of live witness in our country. Dr. Tarr, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. I feel privileged to be part of this, and thank you for Miranda for selecting me to do this, and thank you for sharing your story. You know, we don't often have it as people don't often come out and express their personal experiences like that. So thank you, and then also to our colleagues and patients for joining this evening. You know, I'm asked to talk about live evidence, and it is really real world evidence that we're looking at here. You know, many of us rheumatologists, we are involved in clinical trials where we have these set criteria of this perfect idyllic SPA patient that should be part of a clinical trial, and to use new medications, the new biologic drugs, and you know, you work with the patients and you see how well the medication works, but your outcome measures are really, you know, a scoring system of, you know, how far the inflammatory markers have reduced, how well their radiographic, their X-rays have changed, so they improved, stabilized, prevented excess erosions, and there was no, you know, when you start to take back that information into the real world, sometimes you do find that, you know, real world data has a wealth there, because those idyllic, those criteria cut patients are not always what you're seeing in day-to-day clinical practice. And so, you know, the real world data, there's so much importance to it, and I think the fact that this has been driven from a patient perspective is vital. You know, we look at it from a scientific medical perspective continuously, but to identify the failures and the gaps and the missing links from a patient perspective, I think will really add value in our treatment. You know, the understanding why patients are taking so long to be referred to rheumatologists for diagnosis, understanding why there's a delay in a diagnosis, how patients are being diagnosed, you know, what tools are there out there that patients are not being available to get to, you know, everyone been getting an MRI scan? And then as far as treatment, you know, how are patients being treated? How are they feeling about their treatment? Do they feel that they're walking with their rheumatologist? Are they getting enough information from their rheumatologist about all the different treatment options? And all these gaps will not only benefit for, I mean, I could say that as a rheumatologist, to know where my failures are and have objective criticism about where the missing link is, so I can improve my therapy, would be critical. So the real world data from patients is going to have a wealth of information for us to then obviously improve our quality of service, improve our diagnosis, improve our management of patients, and get a patient's perspective of what really worries them. You know, what are we missing from a doctor's perspective? What questions aren't we asking? Are we asking you enough about your energy levels? Are we asking you enough about your sleeping patterns? Are we taking everything into consideration, or are we just worried about what the blood test says and what the X-ray is changing, how the X-ray is changing? So, from you know, walking this survey from the pre-diagnosis, during that, you know, investigations, diagnosis, management, and thereafter, I think it's going to help a lot. And, you know, coupled with comparing this to international first world countries and seeing how they're doing and what we can change. But you know, we can't say enough about how important an advocacy group is for supporting patients. I mean, I've tried to launch support groups myself, and unfortunately, time is always the limiting factor. And I really do think that it has to be patient driven, and that's why I'm thankful that Miranda has come on board to drive this process, because we as rheumatologists need help. When we are struggling with funders, struggling with drug providers, you know, we need patient advocacy to come through and support us with these decisions and take it forward. And we've spoken many times at ASARA, with ASARA members, about the fact that we can't be responsible for everything. We need these groups to be formed to support each other. Support from obviously finding a friend, support for obviously helping guide people through this path of ankylosing spondylitis. So, excuse me, the conversion of this survey into real world data, into live evidence, to supporting some sort of platform to grow from, to take on funders and have an effect with possibly changing you know, management protocols or treatment protocols that benefit patients, is going to be fundamental. Whether we get it right or not, at least, who knows, but at least we're doing something. And Miranda is out there looking for participants, looking for patients who want to be involved. And I would definitely throw all my weight behind it, because if it works, then that's going to be fantastic. Then we won one for our SPA patients. If it doesn't work, well, then we've at least tried. But I do think that Miranda's onto something good here, and I'm hope that my colleagues will agree, and we can sort of stand together behind Miranda, trying to support this process. Thanks, Miranda.
Thank you, Gareth. We really are excited about working together with Sarah and the rheumatologists. As you quite rightly said, this is not an isolated project, and you know, we all need to work together to push policy and to advocate for our disease. You're now going to be running through the IMAS information slides. We'll also be making these slides available by email and social media afterwards. So you can sit back and just go through the slides with us, and we will have a question and answer session after this. Next. So the AXPAR patient experience is poorly understood, with symptoms and flares varying every day, causing uncertainty for patients and worrying about their future. AXPAR places a huge physical impact and psychological stress on patients, which can disrupt every aspect of their life. Its quality including mobility, sleep, work, and relationships. The impact of the disease and risk of irreversible damage increases the longer people with AXPAR wait for diagnosis and ultimately optimal treatment. Healthcare professionals who deal with day-to-day disease management can identify the early signs of AXPAR and refer to rheumatologists to avoid irreversible damage. Setting personalized treatment goals based on the impact of AXPAR has on the individual's day-to-day lives and the uncertainty it causes can lead to improved outcomes. So the European data from the IMAS survey included almost 3,000 people diagnosed across 13 countries. We are included in the next phase, which would be ending at the end of this year. IMAS is a research initiative developed by patients for patients to improve the way AXPAR is managed and ultimately decrease its impact on patients' day-to-day life. IMAS is now coming to South Africa. Next. So what is the IMAS project all about? So what you need to know is that this is a research initiative developed to improve the way AXPAR is managed and ultimately decrease the impact on the patient's day-to-day lives. Next. So this is just to show you what's been happening with IMAS across the world. This is the various countries that IMAS has already been rolled out into. Next. Next, Matt, thank you. And this is what's happening as we speak live. So we are forming part of the next IMAS survey that's coming out across the world. So we're very excited to be sitting on this international platform with the rest of the world. Next. So what is IMAS all about? So I guess the most important part of it is to gather research. And once we've done this, we can then share the insights. And of course, the most important is to help raise awareness of this disease in our country. Next. Who is behind this survey? So the IMAS survey started in Spain through a patient initiative. And once it was successfully implemented through the University of Seville, it was then rolled out into different countries and different patient organizations. You can obviously read in detail more about the rollout and who was behind the survey. But recognizing the needs to increase the understanding of how AXPAR impacts the lives of those who live with the disease, Novartis and its partners expanded the Spanish initiative between 2017 and 2019 across loads of countries in the world, and we are now one of them. Next. So what's the survey going to do for us? Well, the first thing it's going to do is going to increase patient understanding. You know, AXPAR is an invisible disease and it's complicated. And these results are going to be able to make us better understand the patient's needs. Also, we are going to shorten the periods before diagnosis because this is going to certainly help us to increase awareness of the disease, the patient journey, and optimal treatment. This is definitely going to help us to have these very hard, direct health discussions. It's going to help us to change policies, and it's going to help us to talk to key role players about this disease in our country. And then, of course, lastly, it's going to really help us to improve the resources that's available for patients in this country. Next. This is just a short explainer of how the survey was conducted, but the short of it is it was done via a 30-minute questionnaire across 12 countries, and it has been expanded across the world. And the patients are recruited via patient organizations, and they have to be 18 years and older. The survey covers questions about demographics, social, working life, physical, and psychological impacts of this disease. And the validation of the results was provided by a pan-European steering committee made up of patient representatives from ASAP, Agora, SEDA, and 9 AXPAR experts, including rheumatologists and psychologists. Next. So how were the respondents selected and how did they ensure they had AXPAR? So they were self-reported diagnoses under the care of a physician, and they were recruited by patient organizations and by online channels is what we are busy doing at the moment. Next. How was the validity and robustness of the survey ensured? a multi-stakeholder steering committee of AXPO experts critically analysed, reviewed and interpreted the findings of the survey. This expert steering committee included rheumatologists, psychologists, researchers and patient representatives from several European countries. Also, the BASTI was used to measure the severity of the respondents with AXPO. Next. What were some of the survey limitations? There was a number of measures that were put into place to ensure the validity and robustness of the survey methodology. This included input from the expert steering committee as well as the use of validated measurement tools. Patients were asked to self-assess their disease severity using BASTI and did not attempt to confirm participant diagnosis nor to support participant responses at clinical reported assessments. In the use of non-validated scales such as functional limitations in daily activities and spinal stiffness. And then lastly, the differences in sample sizes between countries resulted in 2 different recruitment methods. Next. So what are we able to see out of the survey? I thought I would show you what's happening around the world and what we are able to see. But what we can say about physical and daily activities based on stats is that 76% improve with exercise, battle with exercise, they battle with cleaning, getting dressed, getting out of bed, climbing stairs. Then it's showing us the delay in diagnosis 7.4 across the world. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with South Africa's results. The sleep and psychological impacts, there's some stats there, what's happening around the world, how it's affecting people's working life, their relationships, and of course the hopes and fears of living with this progressive disease. Next. So what does this mean for patients? AXPO has far-reaching effects. The survey revealed that AXPO places huge physical impact and psychological stress on patients, which can disrupt every aspect of their life. And its quality, including mobility, sleep, work, and relationships. There's a large network of support. The shared experience of AXPO patients, as highlighted by IMAS, show they are not alone and they should speak up to ensure that they get the support that they need to manage their disease. Education is vital for patients, and we've seen that an educated patient is a better patient, but there is a need to educate patients about the impact of their disease. Next. What does this mean for healthcare professionals? I think it means pretty much the same thing. It means a deeper understanding, as Dr. Tars already said, but AXPO and the far-reaching effects it's got. It allows for open discussions, the need to really talk to your doctor about what's really going on. It makes it easier for patients to set goals. You talk about, what they're worried about and, treatment outcomes. And it's going to assist us to get to early diagnosis, because we're going to be creating awareness of this disease. Next. These are the plans for publishing the findings. Our IMAS survey closes at the end of December, so we're going to be working very hard to recruit patients to participate in the survey. Next. Here are the medical references for the presentation. We would like to ask everybody to turn on their cameras and their microphones, and then we would want to give everybody a chance to post their questions if there was anything you wanted to ask, specifically to the doctors and the patients that are in the room. If you don't want to switch your camera on, you can also type in the comment line. While we're waiting for people to turn on the cameras and the microphones, I thought I would address one of the questions we already had from one of the patients. One of the patients asked us why they were not asked to submit their personal details in the email address. And the answer to that is fairly straightforward because there is a matter of confidentiality with these surveys. Dr. Tor, perhaps you can just add another word there, which is a bit more professional than my role. We've lost Dr. Tor. Kavita, are you available in the room to answer that question for us, please?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I got kicked out. I got kicked out to do with the patient education. Miranda? Can you hear me, Miranda?
Gareth,
Hello?
back your sound and
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Gareth.
Can you-
The connection isn't very good, Gareth.
Kavita, would you mind taking over the battling with Gareth's sound there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna leave my video off because I've had to move location since we've last spoken. The question was the de-identification of information from patients. So as far as obviously ethics committees are concerned in South Africa, we would conduct surveys anonymously, de-identify all information that could link up to a person. So that's why we would never, obviously, we did not request ID numbers, surnames, names, or any sort of telephone numbers or email addresses. So it must be completely de-identified from the patients.
Thank you for that answer. That explains it. We're not seeing any other questions from any patients or doctors at this stage, which is good. It means that we managed to nail it in the presentation. If there's any questions that you guys needed to ask, you can always do so on our patient support group. You can pop us an email. We'd be happy to answer the questions.
Miranda, the one thing I think we should obviously see how, we obviously would like doctors to make this available to their patients who would be willing to participate in it. We don't want to sort of force or put doctors in an awkward position of wanting to commit or being, because it should be voluntary, and we want doctors as well as patients to voluntarily commit and not overburden people. But I think we just would like to emphasize how important this could be in the long term. And we would obviously all welcome any support from our colleagues and patients.
Yeah, that's perfect, Gareth. We will make available the slides and the details to both the SORA members and the patients after this. I see that we've got some questions. I'd like to obviously keep the questions related to the survey. I did see there is a question in the chat box which we will answer on our patient support group. I just want to thank, I think it's the right time to just say a couple of thank yous. We would like to thank you, first of all, ASIF. If it wasn't for ASIF, we wouldn't have been able to be placed on this map to do this survey. I also would like to thank Dr. Makan, your unconditional support for our patient support group and the rollout of IMAS in our country. That's been invaluable. Dr. Tar, the hours and hours you spent reading through, checking and double checking documents, it was so crucial for the rollout of this event. Also the hundreds and hundreds of emails I sent you, days and days of emails that you answered really relentlessly. We would also like to thank the Expo management team that's worked around the clock to support our patients. And then, of course, a special thank you to Novartis and Marie that's with us this evening and her team for the never-ending support of our disease and the belief in the importance of raising awareness of our disease in South Africa. We'd also like to thank the University of Seville, who will be handling all the data. And then, of course, to all the rheumatologists that's with us this evening, I mean, your support's going to be invaluable. Obviously, chat to your patients about the survey that's going to be rolling live in our country. And we want to thank you this evening for coming to have a chat to us. We are seeing some non-specific IMAS questions in the chat box, which we will get to at a later point. But we want to thank everybody for their time and coming to join us for the survey. And feel free to post any other questions on our social network or send us an email. Wishing you all the best for the rest of the evening. Good night.